So Native Americans referred to the Hudson as Mehiakantuk, which means the river that flows both ways, which is really in reference to our dynamic tidal system. With a flooding tide, the water's coming north, and on an ebbing tide, the water is flowing south. The Native American tribe that lived in this region, the Tappan tribe of the Delaware Nation, really settled very close to the Sparkhill Creek, where they used this water source for food and other resources, including an entryway into the interior lands to avoid traveling over the Palisades Sill. Then the Dutch came in and settled in this area and gave it a variety of names, including the Tappan Sloot, the Tappan Landing, the Sloot, the Landing, and eventually we have come to the name Piermont. So for a long time, it was illegal for railroads to cross these state lines. So Piermont was chosen as the terminus of this New York and Erie Railroad. So passengers and cargo could be carried from New York City into Rockland County, New York, and vice versa. The Piermont Pier was then built in 1838 for $300,000 out of stone from the Palisades. So they built this pier right into the middle of the river and over the marsh, which extended over 4,000 feet or about 1 mile, which created an additional 90 acres of land right out into almost the middle of the Hudson in this area. The pier was the foundation for this railroad, but then it took another dozen years or so to actually construct the railroad tracks. So in 1851, President Millard Fillmore and Secretary of State Daniel Webster took their first trip on the train back to Lake Erie on the longest railroad in America. Elizur Lord, who is a big investor in the slope and a lobbyist for the railroad, renamed this area the village of Piermont, which is the name that it has today. Piermont was the busiest terminal in the U.S. However, in 1852, just 1 year later, after the railroad was completed, these regulations changed, which now allowed for the interstate train transit, which meant that Piermont Pier was soon replaced by a major stop, which was closer to Manhattan in Jersey City. This cut 20 minutes off of people's travel time, which incentivized people to use this interstate train transit as opposed to Piermont. By 1862, Piermont's population had been cut in half to only 1,200 people. However, Piermont Pier was revitalized when it firmly established itself into the industrial age. In 1902, Martin Williams actually built a massive paper mill right off of Piermont Pier. The railroad provided transportation for supplies and fresh water that was needed for this paper production. In 1920, 18 years later, Robert Garr purchased the mill and invented the first affordable cardboard box. This allowed people to move food products using convenient boxes as opposed to bags and bins as they had been before. He renamed the factory the Piermont Paper Mill and Box Factory, and the business pumped $1 million into the local economy annually and employed 1,300 people from the local Piermont area. In 1943, during World War II, Piermont Pier became known as the Last Stop USA. Due to its proximity to Camp Shanks, which was located in a neighboring area of Orangetown, Piermont was chosen to be the spot to launch 40,000 military troops. The paper mill was also repurposed to support the war effort by making ammo containers, ration cartons, and cardboard containers for blood and plasma bottles. After the war, the mill then changed into a can factory called Continental Can, then into a federal paperboard company, and closed altogether in 1982, where it is now replaced by residential condos that you see today.